Hello and welcome back to the cockpit of the 777. My name is James, reporting from Tenerife North, as usual, which is my base airport. In this video what I want to discuss is the setting of EZdok, a add-on program software that many FSX users use to manage their views, given that FSX doesn't do a good job of letting you handle your views. I do recommend this program a lot. I think using EZdok you don't really need track IR. In fact, I recommend getting EZdok first, and then if you want to enhance your experience even more, get track IR. But I very strongly suggest everybody to use this software, particularly in a simulation as complex as the PMDG 777, which has a lot going on and requires a good management of the views in order to fully control the aircraft in every situation in a good way, in a satisfying way. So a couple of notes. I won't be explaining how to set up EZdok. In fact, I'm not going to show the EZdok view. I will put a link on the description to a video of a guy who explains EZdok. There are multiple videos explaining EZdok. I won't do that. First you should read the manual provided by EZdok, and then watch other videos like the ones I'm going to put in the description. What I'm going to do in this video is explain how I did set up my views, and why I did so, and why it works for me. Okay. So another note is that I'm using the Zytec X52 Control System, which consists of a joystick for the right hand and a throttle quadrant for the left hand. The joystick has two head switches, an upper head switch and a lower head switch, and the head switch lies underneath the thumb, and this is the one I use for my four main views. On the other hand, the left one, on the throttle quadrant, you have a head switch underneath your index finger, and together with the other head switch you have 8 shortcuts for 8 main views, which is enough for setting up the main views of the cockpit. Then, if 8 views is not enough for you, you can use the shortcuts A and S that cycle you through the views. In my case, I have my 8 main views on my head switches. Then I use S to cycle along miscellaneous views. For example, this is a jump seat view, or a view of the one getting into the cockpit, and this is the view I have as a miscellaneous view. Okay, so let's move into the primary view, which is the captain's view, of course. Since we are in a simulation, we might as well be flying as a captain. Let's fantasize. Who would fly as a first officer, being able to occupy the left seat, right? Okay, so this is the captain view. What you want to make sure in this view is that you can see the primary flight display, navigation display, and also at least the left N1 indication, so that when you're hand flying you can adjust your thrust as desired and you can see what you're doing with the thrust. It's also important that you have a nice view outside. You can see the horizon. In this case the jetway is blocking the horizon, but you get the idea. You want to see the horizon, a chunk of the sky, and the main engine and the main instruments. Also, you want to be able to see the EZdok control display, so that you can manage your navigation display as desired. And this is basically the view I use for hand flying the aircraft, for taking off, taxiing, hand flying, and so on. When I'm in the air or using the autopilot, I'm usually using the MCP a lot, so this view is not as good for flying using MCP or for flying when you're using your autopilot, and that's why I'm using the MCP or navigation view. On this view I disabled the camera shaking effects, random effect, turbulence effect, in order to be able to fine adjust every knob. Here you see sometimes EZdok get with the wind effects and so on, it gets shaky, and it's really difficult to set up the knob as you wish, particularly so in those wedding cakes kind of knobs. For example, in this one, the heading knob, the outer gray knob, what it does, it sets up the bank limit, but the inner, or the second stage of your wedding cake, if you will, sets your heading, you see, like this. In this case I'm moving the heading back with the mouse wheel, and that's another note I forgot to mention before, is generally for the cockpit views you want to disable the mouse zoom in, zoom out, and that's because it interferes with the mouse wheel for moving the knobs. So that's my MCP view, the main view I use for navigation, for when the autopilot is flying, when I want to, let's say for example I'm under ATC vectors and the controller is constantly changing my heading, my altitude, whatever. So this is the view I want to be using. Another thing is I didn't mention is pressing down and holding the mouse wheel button, like the middle button of the mouse, pans the camera around, as you can see here. If I release, it stays there. So certainly another possibility is to fly from the captain's view, and whenever I need to do an adjustment of the MCP, pan to the right, adjust whatever I need to adjust, and then hit my shortcut again. That's another possibility if you like, if you have less shortcuts. Say you're not flying the X52 system and you only have one head switch instead of two, then you might want to optimize your views and make use of the panning capability. Okay, so that's my main flying or hand flying view, my MCP view. Then if I hit the left button I have a left view. In this view I can zoom in and zoom out, because I won't be hitting or controlling any knobs in this view. This view is just for looking around, see what's going on during cruise, look down into the scenery and the beautiful scenery and try and see the cars or whatever. And the same for the right view. In this view I can zoom in, zoom out as desired. And so those are the four main views I have on my thumb switch right on the joystick. Now with those views you don't really control the overhead panel that well. Well, you can see that panning out from this view you could control the overhead, but it's not as comfortable. That's why I created a shortcut, which is this one. You see a nice good view of the overhead panel. Nothing much to say here, just you want to have a view of the full panel. You also don't want it to be shaking around, so you want to disconnect the shake effect, because you might want to be using your mouse wheel to move the master bright knob, for example. That might be difficult if it's very shaky. So moving on, if I hit my down or forward shortcut on my left head switch, I will move down to the Radio Shack panel. And here you have a couple wedding cakes and the frequency selectors, for example a transponder, code selector. You have a couple wedding cakes, also a couple rotating knobs which you want to be able to adjust easily and comfortably without the camera shaking around. Moving on, the next two views, well, one view is the throttle quadrant view. This is the view I would use, for example, for injecting the fuel into the engine during a startup. Well, no, actually on this aircraft you see here I can select the fuel control switches to cut them off, to set the parking brake, set the trim. I have, so to speak, a general view of the cockpit. I also like this view for clicking on the FMCs, having a look up on the multi-control display, or moving back to the Radio Shack. This is like a multi-function view. But generally speaking, it's for having a look at the throttle quadrant, setting the speed brake, for example, arming it, seeing what the speed brake is doing, hitting the takeoff go round switch on the thrust levers. I think actually the correct way to refer to these are thrust levers. Throttles is not correct anymore, I guess. I'm not really sure. Also, another thing that's not correct anymore is the pilot not flying. I think nowadays they call pilot flying and pilot monitoring. It's not called pilot not flying anymore. I don't know why. Maybe it gives the impression as if the pilot not flying is not doing anything, which is not true, of course. No, I don't know. Whatever. That's a matter of convention. I might, however, refer to these as throttles. Sue me, I'm not a real pilot, so I think I can refer to these as throttles, or just by mistake. Okay, well, what's the next view? The last view is this view. This is actually what I call a cruise view. So say I climb to the flight level 350 and get up from my seat and walk around the room, do other stuff, watch a movie, whatever. And this view I have a more general view of the cockpit, of the outside, the lights, navigation display, the full MCP. It's a similar view to the MCP view, but I have, let's say, more control over what's going on generally. I could also move this one back a bit, and this way you would see the throttles. I did it again. The thrust levers moving around, which is kind of neat. I love how they move when the auto throttle is engaged, and actually you see what the aircraft is doing if you have a look on the thrust levers. So those are the 8 main views I use inside of the cockpit. Now, if I hit my S button, let's say this is the captain view. If I hit my S button, I will cycle through my miscellaneous views. My miscellaneous views is, well, this is the cruise view again. This is jump seat view, and this is an FO, first officer's view. I also want to have access to the FO because sometimes I use the FO's clock. For example, when releasing the parking brakes before engine startup, I set the clock to have the block time, and I would use the captain's clock to have the flight time. Or I don't know, if I want to set the FO's EFIS panel, or why not? If I want to fly from the FO's point of view, I might also do that sometimes. So that's why I want to have a view of the FO's panel. Also, if I move down from the FO panel, I have access to these 2 switches, the alternate flaps, the selector, and this other switch, which I don't know what it does right now, which is a bit embarrassing. Let's move forward. Yeah, this is the alternate extension and retraction flaps, which I would use in an emergency. So how this works is, I guess, speaking of memory, first you lift the cap, you arm the system, and holding this knob you can extend or retract the flaps electrically. I think it's electrically when the hydraulic system is not working correctly. I might be wrong, but what I do know, however, is that this is the alternate flap extension system, and it's really slow. It takes a lot of time. I think it's electrically powered. Well, whatever. So that's my FO view. Let's cycle through. There it is, my FO view. And hitting S again, I cycle back to the captain's view. So those are all the views I need inside of the cockpit. And now let's move on to the outside. So you know that EZdok allows you to configure 3 sets of views: cockpit views, aircraft views, and world views. I won't be covering world views. In fact, I don't use them at all. I don't see the point really. I think the world views, the function is, if you are always flying in the same airport, you might set up tower view or runway view, whatever. But since most people fly in different airports, lots of airports, if you jump to the if your world view is set in, for example, Tenerife, but you are flying on the other side of the world, changing the view might make Microsoft Flight Simulator load the scenery and mess up with in general, unnecessarily load your Flight Simulator, which I don't want. So if you hit A, you move to the next category of views. I also have a shortcut on the joystick, which is the Charlie button. It's left of my joystick head. So hitting that button, I will go to my tail view, tail down view. I like this view for taxiing. It's neat. It's very nice for taxiing. You can also look around. In fact, the 777-300 extended range has a camera right here in the tip of the vertical stabilizer. This one doesn't, so I set up my own camera here. There it is. And now if I hit S, I will cycle through the cameras. As you can see, I can zoom in and zoom out in this external views. There's no point to not being able to do that, because there's no knobs to be turning. So if I cycle through the views, I will get, this is my walk around view. See, very nice. Lufthansa 777 freighter, Good Day USA. Reminds me of the movie Good Morning Vietnam. It's a good movie to watch on your next cruise. So this view allows me to move around the aircraft. And now that we're here, this is the external power unit. Usually this cables, they connect underneath the ground, the cockpit, and supply the aircraft with electrical energy. Usually these cables come out from the jetway. Here is the air. These yellow ducts supply the aircraft with air for climatization, for having a good temperature inside of the aircraft when the engines are off or the APU is off. That's the chocks right there. The 777. I think this is the GE, the General Electric engines. I'm not quite sure. It's a shame we can't read these placards on the side, but whatever. It's a really cool external model of the aircraft, and being able to walk around it with this view is very neat, very nice. So moving on, this is my Nosewheel view. I use this view when I want to taxi into the gate and nail it. Let's say put the yellow line in between the wheels of the aircraft. Also stop the aircraft where it's supposed to stop. You see here the markings 777. The next view is my left wing view. Here you have the right wing view. Left view forward, right view forward. And this is from the wingtip. This is also a neat view. When taking off, you can see the wing flexing up. You have a general view of the aircraft on this side, which is nice. And again the same with the right wing. And finally, this is a view from the nose wheel but backwards. I like this view during cruise. And again, I think that the 777-300ER might, as an option, include a camera mounted on the back of the nose wheel here somewhere on the strut, and you can have a look of the aircraft and cycling through back to the tailplane. So let's go back into the cockpit, and that's the description of the views I have using EZdok. That's what works for me. That's how I like it. Of course, you might configure it the way you like it. I just thought I might share my configuration to give you an idea. And that's it. I hope you enjoy the video, and I will be recording a couple more videos in the days to come, so stay tuned. Goodbye and take care. Bye bye.